Welcome to Season 2 of Time and Materials, a construction-only podcast powered by livecost.com, where we sit down with interesting people doing interesting things in construction. These construction experts kindly give us their time so that you can walk away with the tools to make better day-to-day decisions in your construction career. Hello, you're very welcome to another special episode of the Time and Materials podcast. This is the first away day, so we've taken the podcast on the road. We've gone to London to sit down with John and Sarah from SymTerra, a company that we know well, a company that we've got a hell of a lot of time for. I'm just been massively impressed by what they're doing within the industry. And we also wanted to draft in my co-founder and also my brother, Niall. And we wanted to just have a chat around. So the interesting take on this particular episode is everyone sitting around the table comes from construction and is now operating in construction technology. And we wanted to sit down and sort of share our experience, our thoughts with where the industry is at, what it's been like working on site, and then transitioning from that into, say, technology, how we go about that, opinions on the right way to go about that. So a special episode, first time on the road, first time getting a few people from, I suppose, construction background sitting around a table, and I hope you get value from my chat with John and Sarah from SymTerra and Niall from Live Costs. First of all, welcome.
Thanks.
Second of all, we don't know where this is going to go, right? So we're just going to go with it. I think the best place to start with this is background, right? Because everyone, the reason we said we do this is because we're all sort of coming from a position of being in construction. Not to say that we got pissed off with construction, but maybe just seeing things in a different way and wanted to try something different. So put this into context, I suppose. Sarah, starting with you, like where did your construction career begin?
Probably from quite a young age. My dad had his own fit-out contracting business, so I guess I was always around kind of construction. I then, after university, almost like fell into it kind of like by accident. And then worked for a series, fell into like kind of healthcare refurbishments particularly, over a number of years, and then went to Mace and ended up, despite not having a degree in mechanical or electrical engineering, ended up specialising in M&E healthcare fit-out refurbishments.
Quite specific.
Yeah, quite specific. So and I did that for a number of years. I really enjoyed it. I loved working on site. I loved site teams, but I was absolutely. The technology was really bad and really poor, and most of it was kind of top down. And I used to work.
Was that at you from the start? Then, like literally early on in the career, you saw this seeing things in a different way than that things should be better, or like was that itch at you that there could be an easier way to do things? Basically,
yeah, I've always been I've been coding like from a really young age. Like I did like computer science, and I've always thought there was. I always wanted to do things kind of differently. And when I entered it, I was really shocked. Like even just like doing like a basic pivot table for a manager, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're an Excel guru," and I'm like, "No, this isn't that really kind of complicated stuff." And then when the systems that we were using, like we were often drawing straws for like who would have to do the data input, and it was like super clunky. They would like take 10 minutes to load, and sometimes a lot of the software felt like we were keeping other people in jobs, and it just didn't benefit us.
Yeah.
So I just got really kind of frustrated, and I was like, I think there's a better way of doing this, and I think it's a massive opportunity here.
What about you, John? Where did it all kick off for you? Obviously, you landed on it. How long are you here? How long are you in London?
I suppose the usual answer is too long. I'm here 17 years nearly, I think, at this point.
So your construction career kicked off in Ireland first then?
Yeah.
Well, tell us first of all, frame that up. Like, what is it that you qualified in, and then how did you sort of progress through the construction ladder, if you want to put it that way?
Yeah, so I was kind of always good technically with things, taking things apart. I wasn't very good at putting them back together again, so I had to go and get an engineering degree to figure that bit out. It was a bit thick, so I got that and ended up in a job here in London working on underground, mostly in trains, so rolling stock, kind of where my background is. And then by accident, I annoyed the head of engineering, and I was giving him grief of I want something more challenging, I want more meat, I want to have something cool. And he goes, talk to Kahan and just get off my back, So I went down, talked to Kahan. Kahan had this big project. Kahan left a couple of months later. I ended up going from mechanical engineer fixing trains to Googling what is Unistrut and try to figure out construction basics. And I ended up kind of, because the project went in a certain direction, I ended up becoming quite a senior position on the design team. And I liked the fun of it. I liked the excitement of it. Everything was going wrong, but we were in the middle of delivery, in the middle of a construction site where nothing is drawn, nothing is designed, and it was just very exciting. I kind of got stuck into it then. I kind of going, this is for me. And then I learned a lot in that project. And then the projects after that, I got better. And I realized, actually, I'm liking this Excel thing. And every time I'm building something to bring data together into one place, so I could structure it and then see where I am and what's my hit list and my critical action item list, what the Americans brought in. And I was always using Excel to bring data together and structure it. I was kind of going, why am I manually doing this every single time? Why do we have 5 trackers for engineering documentation deliverables? Why do we have 4 of this one? Why are the commercial team not speaking the same language as the scheduling team and so on? So it's kind of like continually, the first thing on a job was always to get the IT in place. And whether that's getting the Wi-Fi working, getting a router in, or getting spreadsheets and somewhere we're going to put all our data, was always the first thing that if I got that right, I at least knew where the project was going and we could be successful.
Yeah, so there's a trend on that side of the table that they probably were looking at technology and maybe it was inevitable that you might end up in technology. Like you were different and you probably got dragged in a little bit.
I got dragged into it initially, yeah. So my background was carpentry, and then I suppose the usual is that you get dragged into business. You end up kind of decent at your trade, and you get dragged into business,
Accidental business
owner.
From the trades, isn't it? Like,
so
you end up
you get good at your trade, and then all of a sudden somebody asks you to, would you do that big job? And you go, I might do it. Yeah, I might do it. So you get dragged into that. So I went from carpenter. I kind of ran a couple of jobs as a foreman, and a bit of project management maybe. Had a first go at business then with a carpentry contractor, or being a carpentry contractor. So all of a sudden gone from just one, and we went up to 25 carpenters or something like that. And that was the introduction into the big sites then. And then I had to have email. That was my first. I had to have email. So hotmail.com or hotmail.co.uk was my first thing. I had a phone. I had email that would come in. That was it. Excel followed, but I loved Excel too. I absolutely loved Excel. I had to have everything in it, and that was my first introduction to technology. I couldn't find a switch on a computer, but when I did find it, the first thing I found was Excel.
I'm trying to frame this up in a way, because the idea of we're all sitting around here today is that we've all come from backgrounds in construction and we've all ended up in technology essentially. And there's tons of people that are out there that are looking at something now, probably listen to this and saying, that's shit. That's not the way that should be done, and I've got a better idea. I'd love to be able to frame that up and sort of give people insights into what it's actually like to go on there and say, right, actually the idea is one thing, but now I'm going to try and execute against it. Like, Sarah, what's one piece of advice even that you could think of to someone maybe that has an idea of a better way to do something, and then it just wants to know, where do I go from here?
Should we put a health warning up at this point?
Yeah, by the way, anything that comes out now in the next 20 minutes comes with a caveat. Yeah, by the way, yeah.
It's at your own health risk.
Yeah.
I think my general observation from it was it's a lot harder than I think I thought it was going to be. In all honesty, I think when you look at these things,
where did you start? So first of all, let me go back a step. So sorry for interrupting you, but I think we better frame up. Give us SymTerra. What is SymTerra? What does it do, right? First of all, and then we'll bring it back there. So tell us about SymTerra first of all.
It's a communication platform from site for the whole supply chain to communicate on it. So it often gets, like with site teams, they call it like, it's replaced WhatsApp for construction. And that's how they kind of refer to it. Investors refer to it as like Slack for construction, which is probably a better analogy, but with much more kind of more complex permissions to reflect like the construction supply chain. But what I love about that is that if you go to someone in construction, you're like, it's like Slack for construction. They're like, what's Slack? So it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what it is. How it originated is we built an MVP basically. And I think the real catalyst of change for us, especially the real boost was we got into Google for Startups. And that was like the first introduction around like a
were you
support
still on
program.
site at this stage, or had
No.
you made a leap?
I had made the MVP on site, and like we were happy and it was being used, and then my project came to an end at Mace, and I made like a choice. Like I can either keep complaining about these things or I can give it a go. So construction's, whilst it's the second largest industry globally, it's a small world. So I left Mace on very good terms, knowing full well I might need to ask for my job back.
Mm-hmm.
My project came to an end. I told them what I wanted to do. They were supportive of it, and off I went. And then it was kind of a real intense period of enlightenment, and there was a lot of like soul searching and wondering, and like, a lot of false starts. And then the biggest change was getting into Google Startups and being in an environment with other people who were doing it, and just being a sponge and just learning as much as possible.
And that was construction tech across multiple industries. Were you involved at that stage, John?
I was still working on Tideway Super Sewer here in London, so I was heading up 3 of the 24 sites, and I was kind of sat on the sideline at this point, helping out bits and pieces, but very much kind of, we still had to go off and earn a living anyway somehow.
Yeah.
And luckily that we're in a good position to go off and be able to do that at that point. And Sarah was able to go off and do the R&D, the research, and get to the place of, and what she achieved with Google Startups was amazing. And that at that point then is kind of going, actually, this is a proper viable business. This is our gut feeling is actually the right feeling to have.
We had a similar experience where we went into an accelerator, local-based accelerator based out of Dublin called the NDRC, National Digital Research Centre, and that opened our eyes up, really, didn't it? Like talk about that. Talk about remember. Yeah. Do you remember how they told us about to go after the problem?
Yeah, I do. It was hard. Because we had an idea, I suppose. It was loose, at best, I would say. It wasn't what it is now. It was pretty loose, and at the time we were, looking at the smaller tradesmen, and SymTerra were coming from Australia at the time, back to Ireland, and we kind of had seen that technology was a little bit more accepted there. Used a lot more people were using accounting softwares, that kind of thing, and it was a tell. It was a tell for us to say, okay, that's happened there. There's a good chance that might happen here. Maybe we should have a go at this because it's not quite ready here yet. There's opportunity, it looks like, to develop some. We started off with the smaller tradesmen, if you like, maybe up to 5 staff. We knew him well. We wore him, so that's a good place to start, and we went into that environment as well, and it's an eye opener. It really was an eye opener, and they just said go after a problem, go out and ask people, how do you feel about this problem, or trying to, what do they call it, the mom test or something? If you remember the mom test was, don't ask your mom. What is it? It's don't ask.
It's like if you have to explain it, like if your mom can't understand it, and don't ask your mom. Like there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Mom, do you like this?
Yeah, and like that always implicitly say.
So you have to ask in a roundabout way. What do you think about this? Or trying to extract the problem from people. So trying to get them to actually say the problem without you prompting them what the problem was. So when we went out, we were hearing stuff like, problems with labour, like, we can't find labour, stuff like that. Problems with getting paid at the time. That was a big thing, for smaller contractors. We couldn't get paid on time. So that's initially the problem we went after. But it was a real eye-opener sitting beside other businesses that were thinking at the same stage.
What did Google do for you? Like what when you look back there and you say, like, that was a game changer for us, it opened our eyes up, it probably was a foundation or a springboard even to get you after SymTerra. Like what happened back then that you look back on fondly there?
I think being surrounded by people that are so driven, and they're like, and everybody is like trying to hack their way to things, and they're very open about that like mentality around they're not sure how to do it, but there's lots of other people with little bits of information, and everyone's very willing to share it. So I think that for me, I think the main thing for me that it did is it gave us like a huge kind of boost, as well as kind of an inner confidence to like get after this, like just give it a go.
Yeah.
And like just, they never ever said anything like JFDI, but it was just like it was very much that mentality of just being like, build, put out, get feedback, iterate, and go again.
There was a secretive stage, I'd guess, because it was for me that this is the best idea in the world. this is the best idea. Nobody should know about this idea. I'm going to tell nobody about it. I certainly had that for a while, and you just really have to lose that immediately. Because that will just work totally against you if you don't tell everybody what you're doing and shout from the rooftops constantly. You'll get nowhere. So I certainly had to get over that little
because
stage.
What people don't understand as well about this, and you've literally just gone through this phase as well, is that the idea is one thing. That means fuck all, let's be honest, right? Execution is the game, right? How you actually execute against the idea is all that matters. But in the middle of that there, you're going to have to raise a shitload of capital to actually do anything about that. But do people understand? I mean, you've gone through that. Like, what's that like? I mean, what's it actually thinking, okay, we've got an idea. The idea has legs. And now we actually need probably a lot more money than I anticipated at the start to actually do anything about this. Like, what did that look like? And where did you go even to get help on that?
I think there's kind of, at that point where the idea is there and you've got nothing except the idea, you've got two choices. You bootstrap it yourself and build the product out yourself and just go for it, which is what we did. Or you go out to the market and you start building the nicest, shiniest PowerPoint presentation and start winning business to get that pre-seed funding in place. I have an idea. I've proven the MVP of kind of like the design bits and pieces. Here's my market research, my TAM, etc., my total addressable market. And then I start raising. And my full-time job then will just be to raise against my idea. Now, we went out with Bootstrap because let's be honest, we didn't really know VC, couldn't name one, I think, never mind, know what we've got at the moment. So we bootstrapped. So we earn money through consultancy, other means, and built a team up. We met a very good developer within kind of the Google environment, which is great. We built a team kind of coming forward from that. And there's some great people we met that were able to go, you should use this tech stack, that one, that big argument, and other solutions and bits and pieces.
I think we're kind of like looking back on it, it's quite embarrassing now, but like I didn't even know that venture capitalist funding was an available option. Like it was not, when you come from like a construction and kind of background, I didn't even know it was something like, when I was like, and people were raising just off of an idea, I was like, how? It was totally alien to me. I didn't even know that was possible. So and until I was in that world, I was like, oh, you can literally just go out with 10 slides and an idea, jazz hands it, get funding to then build out on that idea. It
doesn't make sense like that we could just go to somebody and going, I've got this great idea for a shopping mall, which is somebody who goes shops and it's going to be amazing. And I don't have to put my hand in my pocket and I can get $1 billion in and I can build this shopping mall idea in somewhere like Westfields and Stratford. We're not from that.
No.
We're from build a business and go to the bank and get a loan and maybe expand further. A normal kind of business background is where we're from.
Did you find it difficult to communicate with investors coming from construction, and most of the investors are coming from maybe a technology background, for example? Did you find there was a difficulty there in trying to communicate what you were trying to do?
We pissed away probably easily 6 months of time, and it felt like we were just like screaming into the wind. Some of the time we're like banging our head against a wall. It actually took 2 VCs to take us aside to be like, right, we need to start skinning this up differently. You're doing it all wrong, and you don't know what you don't know. And I think there's another thing as well, that then Google kind of was beginning to observe this, and they start shoving you in on pitches. So you start to observe other people pitching, and actually when you see other people do it, you're like, things begin to slot into place. But otherwise, even if you Google and it's like, this is like a really good slide deck, how you skin that up into a format that works for you, and how much of it is around that presentation and delivery. But we really struggle to communicate, even in simple things like what you put in slides. And if you think around when you go to a bank with a business plan, what that looks like, and that's how I started with that sort of business plan. And then you take that into like a pitch deck for a venture capitalist. It's like a 180.
And it's so important. Like, that's one of the things that if someone was asking me the same question, like, I'd recommend doing something like that. Get into in an early stage accelerator, because you might know everything about construction. You've got a great construction career about you. You've got understanding of the product, and you've got that pretty much nailed down. Probably even an idea of how you might build it. But the idea of actually going out and having to raise the capital and then build a tech team and all the different pieces that go with getting into tech, you know nothing about that. So to me, it makes sense to do that and try and get onto accelerator and understand. I remember my first pitches, like, fuck it.
I found a step before that very interesting, the speaking to early customers, like that stage, you know, it was on that accelerator as well, and like, you're literally forced out, and it was just really trying to find that big enough problem to solve. You know, I thought that was a massive step, realising, and we had that early stage idea that, you know, the man, call him the man in the van, you know, but he could be bigger than that, and we got pushed out there, literally standing with a clipboard and talking to these people. We know them well, but asking them about the problems, and we kind of put them fancy PowerPoints together and say, you know, what do you think of this idea? And the answer was they didn't care.
Yeah.
And that took a while to you know, because your dreams were shattered. That great idea that you didn't tell anyone about was shit, and we had to really change then our thinking, which was hard. Like, we literally had our the business idea in our hands, going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
I remember a mate at the time telling me, you've done more pivots than a ballroom dancer. Because it was like that. We were looking at this saying, but it wasn't. And I look at that, and I don't look at that as a negative. I look back on that now and I say, that was the right thing to do. Like, what are you going to do? Keep going with your shit idea? Because that was your original idea and you want to stick by it? No, you're taking, the more feedback we were taking on, the more educated we were getting about the market, the customer, and we were making changes.
There is a feeling there then that, you know, we evolved the idea to say, maybe it's not that level of customer, maybe it's you know, they're bigger companies, and what's their problem? You start talking to a few, and then, you know, but I think you'll know when you hit them with the idea, maybe as it evolves, you'll know when you talk to them that
Did you
is the
have
right
that
thing
aha
to do.
moment where you said, yeah, got this, no, I know I'm onto something now? Can you pinpoint a moment of time where you said, I mean, there must have been a point, John, where you said, this is worth giving up the career?
Yeah, I think the work that Sarah did was fantastic with Google Startups. I think that kind of really kind of cemented that the thing that we'd always been complaining about and the issues we always had, it's actually a real problem. It's not just in our heads. It's not just because we like spreadsheets and so on, and other people just get on with it. Projects will continue on without either of our products. They have done for now. They will do in the future for those customers who don't want to come on board with us. They're still going to deliver, and they can still deliver great projects. But the industry is not data-centric, and that's been, I suppose, a bit of a kick for any of us. Of kind of going, I don't care, mate. Instead of going, but you should.
Yeah.
The aha moment, I think, came from last year. We got lucky. We got some really nice customers on board that kind of believed in it. And we had Liverpool Street blockade, so coming from real environments, a real project. And a bunch of old fellas, off the tools, not tech, don't care, can just about work something, and they're not going to go near turning on a computer. And these guys adopted the system immediately, and they just ran with it. And they went really hard. They were doing an update on this product every 12 minutes. The norm, every 4 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we just had this adoption. We had this feed of information. We had things going right, things going wrong, progressing, people jumping on. We had 50 or 60 managers from 3 or 4 different companies looking at SymTerra app to see what's happening on my job right now. This is the most critical app on my phone. And that was, I think for us, that really cemented for me.
Yeah, seeing the app being used, and I think even to a point where once where one client said, like, we now have so much data coming in from site, we don't know what to do with it. And that was kind of like, great, we've solved one part, but we haven't, but it's created kind of a new problem. I think in terms of so VCs call it product market fit, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think being really truthful, obviously we're always going to say to VCs, try and, generally especially when you're trying to raise money for them, we're at a stage where we are still trying to really nail product market fit. And I heard recently someone say that it should feel like you're rolling downhill, and that's what product market fit will feel like. But I was like, it still feels, being totally honest, sometimes it is, we are still evolving, and we haven't got to that feeling yet. I think we still are sometimes pushing uphill.
Yeah.
And it's really important still to get things around outbound sales. There's nothing quite like that to tell you good, honest feedback. That's one thing I love about construction as well.
Where's the short? Yeah.
Straight between the eye feedback. Yeah.
And I love that kind of about it. And as well as where you fit into it. So how you were saying around where you play and where you add that value, I think is also something that you are in an early stage startup trying to figure out, and you thinking you have a hunch on it, but then I remember thinking, like, once we built the product, because I come from construction, once we built the product, I thought that would be like the hardest part. And then, like, you know, at the end,
Yeah.
and you finish that
Build
build
it
of
and
that
they will
first
come.
product, and they will come, and then you do it, and they don't, and you're like, the hardest part is actually what comes after, and then you then refining, continuously iterating on how are we gonna win more on this.
We certainly believed that was the case, that we would build this application, and you know, that's it. Then it's done, and then off we go, and then we just the money
Build the
would
next
start.
thing.
And that would just happen. You know?
We actually thought at the time, like we'd build it, they'll fly in, and we'll have to think about the UK. German market's going to come probably in year 2.
Yeah.
Year 3 we'll
But
be
the
going.
technology has stopped.
Yeah.
Like, so we had no technology whatsoever between the two of us other than Excel at the time. So we had a sharp learning curve of what that meant to even maintain something like this or even build it. So, you know, and we're still learning that, like, of, you know, how difficult these things are to build, you know, even if it's just a simple application. There's so much goes into it.
One thing worth talking about there is, if we bring it back into what the topic of conversation as well is about, like, things that I would do differently if I look back on it. I don't know what your experience was. We tried to we went external with saying we'll use agencies and stuff like that to try and get the MVP together and maybe go to market, and that was a mistake. And that wasn't like that was not going to work for us. Yeah, there's companies have been successful. I should say that companies have been successful doing that model. For us, when we were going through early idea stage and getting the product into people's hands and trying to get feedback, it felt like for us, if we didn't have the technology beside us, then we couldn't make changes, we couldn't iterate, we couldn't give the customers back what they're actually asking for. So I think Dermot made a big impact on that when Dermot came in, being able to sort of
well, it
have
wasn't.
that
We
in-house.
failed. We failed because we went with that model initially, saying, "Well, we can do this." Like, the accelerator that we're on at the time had even said, quietly over a beer, "I don't think we should be taking people like you on." And he didn't mean it derogatively. He said, "Like, you have no tech, you're going to struggle." And I just not
Because the
struggle.
world we come from, you just get subbies in, don't you? You know,
get-
that's the
that's
the
right.
world,
Get
isn't
in
it?
that
You know,
subject matter,
that's
like,
true.
experts.
So
Yeah.
if you tell them what to build, they'll build it, because that's your experience so far. And it failed. We left it in their hands, saying he's a capable subcontractor, if you like. And when we got it back, it wasn't what we expected. And then we expected iteration because it wasn't what we expected, and we didn't get it. So we had to, if you want to call it, another pivot of thinking rather than to go away from outsource then to bring it in-source. And we got lucky then that we just found the right person at the right time that was in a similar mindset, that was able to do it from then. But even then we were still learning that, okay, how long will it take you to fix this? 6 weeks? How's that sound? We're still fixing it 2 years
like,
later.
I often struggle with that, and be interested in getting your opinion on this. Like, we understand our customers so well because we actually are the customer, right, essentially. And when customers give us feedback, I always call Niall the bridge, right? Niall's the bridge between the customer and the technology. And I often think, would we ever actually able to do it without that, like, understanding? There's a language, right, that construction talk. There's a language that technology talk. Put the two of them in the same room, I think they're going to struggle to figure each other out unless it's that bridge. When customers tell you, I need this particular problem solved, this is how I want to see it, how do you communicate that back to technology to end it up in a product?
So I think that's kind of where I've landed extremely well in past projects, is that I was that communicator between the team and the IT department and what's our needs, and then the suppliers and the IT and the software companies going, look, this is how, and how can we best get around it? And how can we optimize it that everybody has the least amount of work to do for as quick as possible, and so on. And I think that our clients, I'm guessing like yours, really appreciate that we come from industry and that we're going, can we have it this way? And they're going, you can have it any way you want, but that's the worst way to do it. Let's have a chat, and what is your actual root cause? And what is your problem that you're trying to solve? And how do you solve this issue with, instead of doing a 90-question form, can we make a better one? Can we make it easier for teams on the ground? Can you actually get the information you want at the other end? And I think that hand-holding is needed, and we've definitely noticed that the industry might have a lot of tech, but are not data savvy. They're going, we need a report, we need this information, we need this data. What's it for? Don't know, just want it all. And I think we're going to start seeing maybe next year, we're going to start seeing a change of people moving into a data-centric thing of, what's good data look like? What do we need? What's the value for it? And I think we're starting to do a lot of education with our clients who are coming on board and going, this is good practice. This would make your guys on the ground's lives easier. This will get more information in. This will give you more visibility out. And that's where the value add, I think, is coming from.
Kieran's asking, I thought I interpreted your question more around how do you translate like them, like your clients and or feedback or potential customers to a development team. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted
Both
off
ways,
topic.
yeah.
Yeah, that's not a surprise.
Sorry,
We expected it.
I don't talk tech at all, like in that sense.
do.
Like the fact that in construction, gravity has not changed since I was in school. I learned about physics, and Python and everything else is updated every 5 minutes, and it just drives you nuts. It's like, there we go.
I think if our developers are listening to this, I feel like they can leave comments on how much they feel about it. But I think one of the things that we did do earlier on, and I do think it's important to do it, is to try and understand like your tech stack, why things work, how data moves through the system. I think that's crucial because I think if you get it wrong, it can be very, and you will, as a business scales, you will have to go back to revisit it. But I think it's appreciated by them around understanding how the database works, your tech stack, and how the information flows in the system architecture. And I don't think sometimes enough people do that. And yes, it takes time, but when they're trying to explain something to you, you're like, okay, I get this kind of a lot more. And I think
I totally agree. So I ended up in that by default, that when we brought them in, we just had no money or no tech. So I said, actually, I'll help. Well, we had no product to sell at that point, so I said, look, can I help? Can I do anything? So I started. YouTube was the best thing in the world.
yeah,
It's just the best thing in the world. You can learn anything about anything. So I started learning, say, could I help on the front end or whatever, front end of the website? Can I do anything? And I started diving into it. But that's where I learned about what a database is, what does that mean? How does that happen? How hard is it? My God, this is really hard. And now that little bit of 6 months of time has really stood to me now, because now I understand how it works. I have some clue of how it works, and I think that's really important. Really,
I think
really
that's probably
important.
the number one lesson. If you're going to go into a tech startup, understand your startup stack.
You don't have to do it yourself, but having some concept of what it means, and even if it's something you do on the side, a couple of hours in the evening, trying to make something, I think it'll really stand to you. Really stand to you.
How open are your potential customers to technology when you speak to them? I mean, are they do you have to replace current technology, or is it a case that it's 90% of the time we're up against WhatsApp, and now we have a better construction version of WhatsApp or Slack, whatever it might be? Like, how open are they to the change?
I think they're either open for it when they've got a problem. I think when they realise that they've got a problem, that WhatsApp is not the solution, or Excel is not the solution, or lots of Dropbox folders is not the solution, that they're kind of going, we're struggling here to keep on top of, and the admin has gotten well beyond what we can actually manage with our existing. And there's nothing wrong with using Dropbox and Excel. I highly recommend it for people starting out very small businesses. It's a great solution. You've got an audit trail, and if you're on top of quality, you'll be pretty much compliant with most of things. Get health and safety right, you've got a good solid business there if you care about quality, audit trail, and safety. I would, you'd be that kind of company that I would hire as a subcontractor. But if you've gotten too big and you're realising that that smaller solution just isn't fit for purpose anymore, or your incumbent legacy system is just not meeting the needs of the industry, of the business right now in the industry, because everybody's moved the data to WhatsApp instead of using this incumbent system, they're our customers. They're the people that are open a bit more to it, I think.
I think what surprised me is I thought the larger contractors would be much more open to it, but they're not. And it's not true. I think a lot of mid to senior management is open, but they have incredibly bloated, heavy tech stacks that are where data lives in proprietary systems. It's not portable. It's it's locked. You can't get in. They're just like, no, the IT department are just. And I thought that surprised me with some of the larger contractors, where I would say with the middle, they're like the SMEs, I think, are much more open to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of legacy systems though. I mean, you kind of have you have the Dropbox, Excel guys. They're the ones we come across the most. That are starting to change into. They might have, for us, it's accounting softwares. They might have some. What surprised me was that there's a lot of legacy old desktop software, and these guys are paying guys to come in and maintain servers now, and they don't even know what a server is. I don't know what a server is. I don't know what it does.
That blows my mind.
It's amazing to me, like that they've inherited old systems and they're stuck with these old systems. And but I think it's starting to. I think it's starting to register that there are alternatives to how hard that is, and trying to make things easy on yourself. Like Excel is great, but it's hard to maintain when it gets out of hand. It gets out of hand.
It was like COVID. I remember talking to a customer at COVID, and they were saying that they work on an on-prem accounting software. They were locked out of their offices, and COVID, therefore couldn't access the finances. I was like, what? Like, in this day and age, if your finances are essentially locked up in an on-prem server.
It's like when they say that it's not on the cloud, I'm like, what? Like, how? But that was I think that's really surprised me in the sense of like how the larger contractors are much more, because and you can't get through the IT department. The IT department's like, no, we this is it. This is what we use, and we're sticking with it. And it's like, and you've seen a lot of like project teams and site teams complain about that software. I mean, at Mace, I used to whinge like every Friday at the end of the month for the reporting of just like, I was saying that one of the software packages we had, I was like, it literally takes 16 minutes to open, and each box we had to like tick in was like a few minutes just for that you click, and then it would be like a 60-second delay, and then it would like select the box, and you're like, time is money.
Do you feel the industry's like where do you feel the industry's at in terms of we hear this digital adoption, digital transformation? They're the buzzwords that are around at the moment. Like, we don't see it. We feel at our end of the market, and I say our end of the market, we just deal with we deal with customers that are 50 staff, maybe 200 staff, probably maximum that type. But that's where we play, and we still feel that we're very early. Like how do you feel the industry is positioned, let's say, for digital transformation?
So I come from mega projects, so we've got hundreds of millions to spend and splash around on stuff. We have innovation managers, and we've got Spot the robot dog from Boston Dynamics all over the place. And drones. Yeah, we've got them.
I didn't know you had one.
The thing is, they're all in the storage cupboard because the young fella we hired or the young girl that came on the grad scheme has now gone, and nobody can work the dog anymore. And the drones were nice, and we took a video, and then we didn't use it again because we just use that video for planning, and it looks nice to explain to residents where we're going to dig things and do things and put railway, etc. And then we put it away. And it's nice and it's shiny, and it's like that toy you get for Christmas. You have it on Christmas Day, and the batteries run out on Stephen's Day or Boxing Day since we're in UK, and you don't get new batteries, and it just sits there on the shelf, and it just kind of you don't use it again because it just was nice, it was cool, it was exciting, but it never lasted. And I think we're seeing a lot of that fancy shiny stuff in the big projects that's showing off the can do, the what ifs, the big kind of dream stuff, because we can afford it. I mean, we can put 50, 100 grand on something and not even miss it. And that's great because we can really showcase the best of off-site manufacturing, digital twins, drone technology, robotics, everything. And there is going to be a future for a lot of this and 3D printing. But we then don't use a lot of that afterwards because the value add is missing. So once it looks like the big projects have got this and that everybody's being left behind, I don't think that's the case. I think it is getting the basics right in the industry and building a solid foundation on which to build. I think it's kind of that's going to be more of the learning. And I think as we go into recession, the fancy stuff that just isn't adding value to the project team, isn't making us work faster or safer, that's going to start disappearing off, and whatever's left is going to be the solid technology that's going to be coming forward for the next decade.
But I think, to say, like, to anyone listening, I think, especially if you're going to speak to VCs, what you definitely need, that VCs always, one of the core questions they ask is, like, why now? So you should, if you're listening and you are going to go speak to a venture capitalist, I highly recommend going looking like what the papers McKinsey puts out about construction, which talks about what you were saying, Kieran, around, like, now, like, this it's like it's prime pickings right now for construction. And I think that should definitely be said kind of to them. I think in the reality, honestly, I would say, like, it was kind of our experience probably quite similar to yours. I think what we're seeing is the younger generation kind of coming through, in particular people within their 30s and early 40s. They do want to do something different. It's expected. It's like they've grown up now with with smartphones are the norm. And we say, like, oh, they're not somehow tech literate. No, they are. They know how to use. They know how to do online banking. Like, all of these different things. So I think they're not accepting it as much anymore. But I think at the very top in summer, there is still this mentality of, like, well, we've been doing it this way for 20 years, or And the other thing that we sometimes see is with some of the larger contractors is they don't have, it requires like probably a team of like a dozen people to make the decision, and that really elongates things down, that really slow, and then that can also, but we time and time again, my favorite one recently is someone within this, probably like a tier 2 contractor, has been saying, oh, we can just use SharePoint for communication on site. I was like, but that's not what SharePoint does. And there's this real disconnect between, and the project team are communicating, well, this isn't going to work, this doesn't work for us. And that they're just not tolerating it anymore.
There is that education piece, and that probably has to go back to the apprenticeship model. Like, there's no point in bringing the apprentices on, brilliant with their hands, brilliant in trades or engineers, whatever it might be, and forgetting about technology as well. And then they end up in these roles and go, oh, by the way, we use this tech and this tech and this tech, and you don't know about that. So there's another learning curve for you. You should, like, if we're going to do it right, bring it back to the apprenticeship model as well. Introduce tech early. That'd be my take on it. What's the plan with SymTerra? Like, as you're sitting here today, it's gone well. It's going well. It's been successful to date. Like, what's the overarching vision for SymTerra? What do you guys, like, when you sit in your rocking chair when it's all said and done? What's success look like for SymTerra?
Want me to go first?
You can do if you want.
I feel like it's
I
going to
could
quite
waffle on.
Yeah, I can give it different. I think what the hope is, we have built a kick-ass product that is widely used. The team that we created is phenomenal, and they go on to kind of greater things, and they have also adopted like the culture that we currently have now, and they have like spread, that has scaled well, and that company culture is being maintained. I think the team are probably like the best part of the whole experience kind of for me. And I think I would definitely like to work less hours. I think it's you live and breathe it, and I think I would like to kind of move more kind of away from that. And ultimately, I'd like to have a little house in Biarritz that I can have that I can escape to and have my nice cheap wine, have a good surf, and have a house in West Cork, near one of my favourite surf spots, and I can like come in and out. And I think then ultimately being an angel investor, I think angel investors, it looks like a lovely life. And you can like enjoy the startup but you're not in the muck and bullets. So that would be my ultimate dream. And so implicitly within that, we've sold.
So you'd look to exit at some point.
Well, we've got on the VC merry-go-round, so I think when you get on it, it's inevitable that you
made the decision. Once you have got on, and we've been very lucky to get some fantastic investors in the VC land. That is implicit that they want an exit at some point, and I think that's the kind of decision that you at the very beginning you're making. If I'm going the VC route, I'm going to have to leave the business at some point, and it's either merger, acquisition, liquidation if it doesn't go well, or you go to IPO and you're on the stock market ringing the bell at the Nasdaq. That's the kind of level of, once you made the decision, you are making the decision to accelerate a business and grow something fantastic, but you are looking that there's going to be people who are looking for an exit at the end of the day. And you have to acknowledge that and be aware of you are building a business now to go forward and scale rapidly.
I think the level of work involved in building it will probably force you to think about exit as well. Like, there's a lot of work goes in, a lot of hours go into it. No more than anybody else, but still, it's fairly intense. So
you've got your ambitions, don't you? You want to see it scale into a fair few regions before you even think about that, don't you?
I think we happen just to come across a problem that hasn't been totally solved yet. So like, we're sort of different. You were talking about the dog and that kind of thing. So we're selling into the smaller type businesses. Like, it doesn't have dogs or it doesn't have drones. It doesn't need them. But they still have a need for software, in my opinion. So like, they are starting to, like as you said, younger people are starting to adopt it. I think the problem we have is just a common one. Am I making money? So I think it goes into a few countries. So I think I'd like to see it go into a few regions first before I say goodbye to it. Yeah, definitely. There's so much more to do.
Where can people learn more about SymTerra or even reach out to yourselves?
LinkedIn is probably one of the best bets. So Sarah Crawley, Sarah with a H, Crawley, like creepy Crawley. and that probably the best place to kind of reach me. I'm not massively into social media, but yeah, so I would say LinkedIn would definitely be the best place to reach out and learn a bit more. And I'm always happy to like speak around my experience, raising money. Could talk about that a lot. And yeah, that's the best way to find me.
You guys offer free demos and stuff on the product, and
We do.
Yeah.
SymTerra.com. You can sign up there for a demo. We can be in touch and go showcase it. Part of the demo, we're always kind of interested in seeing what you're using, how you're doing it, and sometimes it is very much a bit of advice to the team and get them on their merry way to even set them up for success. We do want to give back to the industry as much as we can. So even that part is learning about both sides.
Are you guys still doing the demos yourselves?
Yeah.
I love them as well. Can't let it go.
I'm very interested in seeing what's wrong, what's going on, what's the gossip in the industry, what's happening, what's going on, where are things going, what's moving, what do you see?
Have we fixed it?
Yeah.
Have we fixed their
Yeah,
problem?
and also I think you should be there for those conversations still to get that feedback. And
I still
I love
do
it.
every single training.
Yeah.
I can't see that end
I
for
have
a long time.
I have to, because we've got a fairly large product, I have to ask maybe 5 minutes to start a demo. Listen, what are you essentially here for, or what are you looking for, just so I don't end up in rabbit holes. But the insights you get into people's businesses in them 5 minutes, just I just can't let that go. It's too valuable to us as a business for me to understand exactly what's going on out there. Noel, if people want to reach out to you or connect.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody who's thinking technology, I'm happy to share experiences. I mean, the amount of help we got from people is just invaluable. So Niall at livecost.com, happy to share any insights I have on that. Absolutely.
It's a fair point, isn't it? I remember that as well. I reached out to a lot of people to try and get insights, and people are just you're surprised how helpful people can be, can't you? In the way,
especially
really.
within and it's the same even on construction site with the subcontractors, when you're like, I don't know, I have no idea or knowledge about this, but like most people are like genuinely willing to share and impart that knowledge. And I think I would say that's dialed up even more, in particular from a tech side and from a developer, and the whole open source code and conduct there is very, very, very different.
If you're listening, you're going to save so much time.
Yeah. That's it. The away trip for Time and Materials is wrapped up. Let's go and get a beer. And thanks very much, John, Sarah from SymTerra, and Noel. Thanks very much for coming on as well.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
Thank
bye.
you.
Time and Materials is brought to you by LiveCost, the construction software fully designed to manage your construction financial forecasts. Visit livecost.com to take a product tour, or reach out to our team of construction cost experts to transform your project profits. Any links mentioned during this episode, including speaker profiles or any other resources, are available on the podcast show notes. Your feedback is also welcome. We would really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review or email your comments, guest suggestions to hello@timeandmaterials.com. Finally, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I'm your host, Kieran Brennan.